That's what this series is about, and that's why it's called Morning Light in Mustang Pens. Because I think more than anything, what I love to paint is light. So I think, for me at least, what these paintings are about is light. But then the other thing that began to happen, you get these groups, and there's sort of this statement that each group makes. You know, this is a real different statement from this group than, for example, what this would be. But then within the groups, you get these individuals. And there's usually somewhere in the thing, there's some horse that is looking at us that is really suspicious, but also curious, I think. And so for an artist, or for me, it was just such a great opportunity, because I wanted to express the group and what was going on with these guys, but at the same time, here were all individual emotions to express. And at the same time, here are all these patterns that until I really looked, I hadn't seen them. And so the painting process became this great discovery process. I mean, all these like little shadows coming in here, and how that sort of repeats the shadows that come through here, and then being able to use just pure blue to offset the orange. I mean, it just was, it just kind of turned me loose to go crazy. And I had no idea where these paintings were going to go or how they would turn out, which was also super exciting. And then things like really heightening her expression with this veil coming across and her looking so mysterious. That was a lot of fun. And then here's all these horses that meanwhile have different ideas and are looking at the viewer. So it was just these elements that just kept happening as I was painting. This was a painting that, as I got into it, the colors changed. Obviously, there's no such thing as a turquoise horse out there, or a jade horse. But just, again, it was something that, as the painting just kept pulling me in, these colors just kept coming up. And I was as surprised as anybody to see what colors I painted them. I mean, because here's a turquoise next to a pink. And the other thing that was going on in here was all these wonderful triangular shapes that kept happening. And all of that opposed to these patterns that were back here. On the edges, you get the abstract now of what's going on in the painting, and there's not the horses to apply it to. So you can really get into what the relationship was with the colors and with the shapes, and not be even thinking about horses. This one, I was just explaining to everyone here that this was a horse that had been put out on the adoption, and someone had adopted it, but it hadn't worked. And they brought the horse back. And so this is the story now of this horse coming back in, and all the different kind of rituals that they go through. He knows what's going on, and these guys are inspecting him. And so you get all of, there's a whole story in that was fun to do. And then the other thing that was fun was, again, working with these colors and then coming in and laying down that blue, but I was going to make it more of a shadow color. And I thought, oh no, I just love the blue, and who knows where the heck that came from. I loved what was happening with the shadow of his face again. And then all of this was going on. And again, I put the stripes this way to bring those legs out. And this had a different fence behind it at the time. But because of this, I thought, I know what I want to do up here. And sure enough, it worked just by repeating this pattern up here. And the other thing that went on with this for me was there was just so much humor in this horse, I thought. And I wanted to make it kind of light. So I did this with the clouds to just sort of give it that light effect. And again, I just loved the whole creative process of this, because again, it was the painting that just kept suggesting these things to me. And I said, okay, I'll try that. And so I came up with something that I never could have planned or imagined. And it's not something that was ever out there. It's just the painting that decided this is what it wanted. And it's just so much fun to work that way. And this was a really limited palette. And for my shadows, I went ahead and just used the pure cad red and the pure cad orange, because that's the exact opposite of what we're supposed to be doing. and use blue as my highlights on top just because I wanted to play with it. But again, that sounds like I was in charge. And it was really something that as I was working, it sort of occurred to me and I did it and then it worked. And again, I came up with something that I hadn't imagined. And it was just a lot of fun to kind of reverse all the rules as I was painting. And it's the morning light. The morning light is it's just so amazing because it has all those wonderful golds, and as you're there and it's dark and now it's lighting up, it's like this warmth just comes out of everything as the sun hits it. But the other thing is that I'm a great Van Gogh fan, and I got to see some of his original or his work before it was finished. And he didn't work on white. He worked on linen that had this beautiful gold color to it. And so I, many years ago, just began putting an ochre on everything because I wanted my eye to respond to the ochre and be measuring my colors against that as opposed against white, because he gets that wonderful warm color. I mean, you feel like the sun comes out of his paintings. And I really love that. And so I think that also influences these warm colors because I'm starting with a warm color on my canvas. It's not white. And that really, I think, makes a big difference to how my eye measures it. The horses are doing all the work for me. I mean, I don't think I changed much of anything in this because, you know, she comes in and her head turns and it just picks up all these other motions that are going that way. And this horse kind of holds it all together. I mean, they did it all for me. And then as I did this, I could start to see the relationship in patterns between these lights up here and then the dapples on her rump. And then what happens here through the light as it moves through that horse. And so this was one of my favorite pieces for that. There was a lot of discovery, and this was one of the earlier ones I did, and I began then to look for what I had discovered in this. I began to look for that in all the other paintings as they came along. This was fun too. This is my Hitchcock moment because I'm here taking a photograph and the light's behind me, and that's me right there. And I left it in just because it makes I love this pattern through here. And then coming back, and it was really fun to work shadows with this one because I wanted it to the blues and stuff, but it was just too blue and too heavy. And I wanted to get some warmth back in, so I began just layering colors as I was working with this and I let the blues stand out sometimes and other times just went back into the warm. And in this one too, introduced a sky that would repeat my patterns here. There was a bunch of trucks and other stuff behind these guys, but this is what I wanted to play with. And the way the light was just hitting this one face just so strongly with her, and the horse is kind of moving itself so it can have its eye in the shadow and still see you, because once you get your eye down in the light, you can't see anything, and that's what she's doing. And I love the expression on these horses. They were a ton of fun. This painting, as I lived with it, became one of my favorites because it just captures so much of what I've been trying to do with light. I mean, and again, I wasn't quite aware of how I was just really starting to get into the patterns here. And I was just focusing on working pattern, and this pattern with this pattern and this. And then as I really got away from the painting, even for a couple of days, and came back, it all of a sudden had all this depth. And it just really had, I just felt like, that's it. That's the light. That's the light that I've been really working for. And it was a lot of fun for me color-wise, because here were all these rich, wonderful, warm colors coming in from the morning light. And the light was catching just right underneath here, and it brought up that gold a lot more. But then that goes right into these blues and purples. And then here's all these other wonderful blues that come through here. And then that let me know what I wanted to do in here, because the seduction on these things was to get too involved with the fencing per se, and not be just involved with the patterns. And when I would just stay with the patterns, this really great magical stuff kept happening, including down in here. So again, I know I keep repeating myself. I just feel so lucky that I fell into this. I mean, it's a whole new aspect of Mustangs. I was always painting them outdoors, you know, running in the iconic freedom theme. But here it's something different. And one of the things that really impressed me with Mustangs is they bring all these Mustangs into this big pen. And they've just come in from the wild. And they race around this pen, and then they just all stop. They all stop at the same time. And they stop, and I don't know if one of them thinks it and gets it to everybody else, or if they all just come to the same conclusion, but they stop because they know they're going to hurt themselves. I think that's what they're doing. And then they just start milling around, and they find their families again, and then form these really tight little sculptural forms. And if you were to take bighorn sheep or deer or elk, anything animal that's truly wild, and run them into a pen, I don't think they would all just stop like that. I think they would all just be running around and keep going until they got too tired. But Mustangs, and I've been to a whole bunch of these roundups, they do that consistently. They do it consistently. What I loved about this painting was this shape that does this. And so then I came in and invented a sky that would repeat this. But as I painted it, I got into all these really wonderful shadow areas that allowed me to just really mess around with color again. And this was a really limited palette. But so I just took the colors that I had limited myself to, and then just kept, as the painting called for it, putting them through. And I really got happy with this. At first, I wasn't going to do this because, you know, you're not supposed to put a fence coming out of a horse's nose, but it just pulled the whole composition together to leave it that way. So I did, and for me it works. I don't know, someone else might see it not like that fence there. But this one didn't have any particular fence shadows on it, and again, it had a whole bunch of trucks and other things going on behind. But I wanted to do, this shape was so strong, and I wanted to oppose it with its opposite color in an opposite direction. And I love painting skies, so it was just an opportunity to paint horses and skies. There's just so many strong lines in this just because of his scars and such. And that's why, and this was, I mean, again, the horses did all the work for me, because here's this wonderful thing opposing it. And gosh, I just really love painting it.